I am here with the Vika X, which is a folding e-bike that's part of Blix Bike's revamped lineup. This bike is packed with super cool high-tech features that we don't often see on folding e-bikes, things like electronic shifting and an automatic pedal assist mode where the bike shifts for you. We were extremely excited to see how these features would pan out, so did they make the Vika X as great as we hoped? Let's take a ride and find out. Welcome to Electric Bike Report. My name's John and I'll be walking you through the Vika X today. But first, if you haven't been here before, thanks for joining me today. We're known for making high quality reviews of all kinds of e-bikes that include real world performance data from our series of standardized tests. If you're looking to get the most bang for your buck and find the best e-bike for you, I want to invite you to subscribe to our channel so you can make sure to find your way back later. One last thing before we jump in, we put a ton of time and effort into doing what we do, so if we're able to help you find an awesome bike like the Vika here, we ask that you do us a favor in return and use our affiliate link in the video description if or when you make a purchase. We earn commissions from sales, but using that link won't increase the price you pay, so it's a win-win for all of us. But now on to the good stuff. To start off with a few highlights from our testing of the Vika X, let's talk more about it as a folding e-bike. All of the cool tech features that we'll talk more about in a minute don't really mean a whole lot if the folding part doesn't work, and I'm happy to say that this is one of the most practical and successful folding e-bikes we've tested. The Vika weighs 56 pounds, including its 7-pound battery, and it has a fairly slim and streamlined frame that's sturdy, but also light and nimble. We found that this bike was easy to fold, easy to lift, and easy to transport, so basically it checks all the boxes for what we look for in a good folding bike. But on top of that are all of the cool tech features. So the Vika X is equipped with an 8-speed drivetrain that's operated by a module on the left handlebar that serves both as the bike's control panel and its shifter. So the paddles on that module activate a cable-actuated derailleur to shift gears. It's really quick and easy. But on top of that, once the feature is set up through the Blix Connect app, this system can adjust the bike's power level and shift gears automatically when using the auto assist mode. So all you have to do is get on the bike and pedal. Add in some other things like rear turn signals and both high and low beams on the headlight, and there's just a lot of awesome stuff going on with this bike that you won't find in too many other places. Finally, I want to point out that this bike rides and feels a lot like a non-electric bike thanks to its torque sensor. At least up to the point of doing this review, the vast majority of folding e-bikes we've tested used cadence sensors, which worked just fine, but the Vika felt a lot more responsive and natural in comparison. Plus, it has a 500-watt rear hub motor that's very capable, but it's not so powerful that it dominates the ride. Moving on, let's run through the Vika X's remaining specs, and then I'll do a demo to show you how the bike folds before we dive into our test sections. So I mentioned the motor, and that's paired with a removable external 48-volt, 614 watt-hour battery that's mounted behind the seat tube. I also mentioned the 8-speed drivetrain, which consists of a 52-tooth chainring, a 13 to 32-tooth cassette, a KMC chain, and a microshift 26 derailleur. For brakes, there's a custom hydraulic disc system with 2 piston calipers and 180mm rotors. The Vika has 20-inch wheels with plastic fenders and 2.4-inch wide puncture-resistant street tires from Innova. It has an MIK HD cargo rack with a 59.5-pound carrying capacity and mounting points on the head tube for a front rack. The rear rack has an integrated taillight with brake lights and those turn signals I mentioned. And then to finish things up in the cockpit, there's a set of 640mm low-rise handlebars with locking ergonomic rubber grips. I mentioned the control panel with the shift levers on the left handlebar, and then on the right, there's a half-twist throttle and a module with controls for the headlight, the turn signals, and an electronic horn. A few final details about the Vika X. This bike fits riders from 4'10" up to 6'2" and has a total payload capacity of 312 pounds. It's UL 2849 certified. The bike ships as a Class 2 with throttle and pedal assist up to 20 miles per hour, but it can be unlocked to a Class 3 with pedal assist up to 28 through the Blix Connect app. And it's available in 4 color options, including racing green, burgundy, steel blue, and then this one, which is called slate gray. So with all that covered, let's take a look at how the Vika X folds. All right, so as with most folding bikes, the Vika X has a central hinge in its frame, as well as Blastic folding pedals and a telescoping collapsible stem. I'll go ahead and fold the bike down so you can see the process, and then I'll have a few extra thoughts to add afterward. Overall, that was super smooth and easy, and of course it's worth mentioning that you can always remove the battery to make the bike even lighter. One great feature about this bike that we haven't seen on too many other folding bikes is a magnet mounted to the rear axle that meets up with a metal plate on the front axle, and this helps keep the bike from unfolding when you're moving it around. Since the wheels line up, it also means you can roll the bike at least in one direction when everything is all collapsed down. To help you plan for the amount of storage space you have, we measured the bike's folded dimensions to be 36 inches long by 21 inches wide by 27 inches tall. But let's get into the fun stuff now and see how the Vika X did in our testing. To start things off, we tested the Vika X's custom hydraulic brake system in our brake test. My fellow reviewer Griffin did this test by measuring the distance the bike took to stop after first pedaling up to 20 miles per hour and hitting the brakes. We always do this test 3 times and average the results since no 2 braking situations are the same. The Vika's average stopping distance was 18 feet and 6 inches, which is seriously impressive. For comparison, the average for all folding e-bikes we've tested is 21 feet and 2 inches at the time of filming, so the Vika X was pretty close to 3 feet better than average. And there seemed to be a few different pieces to the puzzle explaining why this bike did so well. So first, this bike's 180 millimeter rotors are 2.3 millimeters thick compared to the 1.8 millimeters we see more often on this style of bike. This means that they can dissipate heat faster and improve the overall effectiveness of the brake system. Second, as we've discussed, the Vika is lighter than average, so the brakes don't have to work so hard to bring the bike to a stop. And third, it's possible that the battery's placement behind the seat tube had at least some effect. In my experience, this bike felt great when braking. This system felt very powerful. So with a combination of a great feel and great performance by the numbers, we give the Vika X 2 thumbs up for its stopping ability. I performed our speed test on the Vika X by riding it in both the Class 2 and Class 3 modes in each pedal assist setting and then noting my average speeds. I did this test on a flat segment of our local bike path network with the goal of understanding the bike's power output in both riding modes. Let's go see how the bike did in these 2 tests, and then we can analyze the results back here. All right, we are here for a speed test on the Vika X. We'll start off with Class 2 mode here and come back a little bit later for Class 3 mode, and then we'll check out the throttle. But starting off here with no pedal assist, right around 11 miles per hour, and that's pretty comfortably, you know, with a moderate level of effort, I'd say. Looks like maybe up toward 11.5 miles per hour at times. Let's go ahead and kick on the pedal assist system. I am gonna skip through the first setting, which is called auto mode. We're gonna go into eco. I will talk to you about auto mode later on in the ride quality section, but for now, you know, we'll just stick with the sort of standard assist levels here. So, you know, feeling a nice amount of power here. Still feels very natural, not a whole lot different than riding without assist, but clearly getting a difference in speed up to around 13 miles per hour, maybe a little higher. Yeah, so about 2 miles per hour of difference. Let's go ahead and go up to, whoops, that was the drivetrain, not the pedal assist setting. Let's go up to tour mode. All right, so, I mean, again, very smooth. Doesn't really feel a whole lot different. You know, there's not like a huge ramping up in power. It's subtle. It's yeah, it's smooth. It's nice. Still feels very natural, and kind of again about a 2 mile per hour difference, maybe 3, yeah, okay. So we are up to 16 miles per hour, or a little above. And then let's finish things off in, let's see, turbo mode. Sorry, speed was creeping up there just a little bit. Okay, definitely more noticeable jump in power in this setting. I'm shifted up to 8th gear, so that's the max. And, you know, approaching that class 2 limit of 20 miles per hour here, kind of landing, yeah, well, between 19.5 and 20. So that's right, what we want to see. All right, we'll call this one done, and I'll see you back here for the class 3 test. All right, we are back here for a class 3 speed test, and I'm starting off in eco mode, and we're kind of landing, you know, right about the same place that we were in the class 2 test, right around 13 miles per hour or a little above. But let's go ahead and switch up to tour mode and see what happens with that. So there again, not a huge difference in feel. We are up to kind of around that same 16 mile per hour mark with the same level of effort. And then let's go ahead and finish things off in turbo mode and see if we can get over that 20 mile per hour limit in this test. So we are up in 8th gear. So, okay, we are exceeding 20 miles per hour by just a hair. Kind of starting to pedal pretty quickly. So we're going around 20.5 miles per hour, maybe up to 21 or so. But let's just give it some more and see what happens. So this is, you know, maybe not quite my natural pace, but you can see that we are getting up above 20. We are hitting right around 26. And then just with a little extra, let's see if we can hit 28. Yeah, okay, there we go. So actually a little above, but we'll call it there. And let's bounce back to the studio. To recap those results, I started off pedaling with no motor power at 11.3 miles per hour. In the class 2 test, my average speeds were 13.2 miles per hour in eco, 16.3 in tour, and 19.9 miles per hour in turbo. Things didn't change a whole lot in the class 3 test. I hit 13.3 miles per hour in eco, 16.2 in tour, and then with a faster but relatively comfortable cadence, I reached 25.8 miles per hour in turbo. I was able to top out around 28.5 miles per hour with even more effort, although I did have to put in quite a bit of legwork. We're usually looking for consistent increases in speed and power, which translates to a linear graph of our speed data. In this case, the class 2 test looked good, but we expected the class 3 results to show higher speeds across the board. With roughly the same cadence and level of effort as the class 2 test, my speeds really didn't change when the bike was set to 28 miles per hour, and as you saw, the bike's gearing required a pretty fast pace to go above 20. The bike felt great in class 2 mode, but with the ability to be opened up to class 3 speeds, we recommend that Blix use a cassette with a smaller cog for its 8th gear. Right now, the cassette's cogs range from 13 to 32 teeth, and we think an 11 or 12 to 32 tooth cassette would be a better fit. Otherwise, I like that the throttle's acceleration wasn't too punchy. It definitely still has the power to get up to speed once it's moving, and throttling around is super fun, but I appreciate that Blix kept safety in mind when the bike first starts moving. So bottom line, this test showed a little room for improvement, but overall the Vika X did a solid job. Now let's talk about our range test, where we pedaled the Vika X in eco and turbo modes until its battery gave out in order to find its minimum and maximum range. We ended up with 39.6 and 63.6 miles, both of which are well above average when compared to the results of other folding e-bikes we've tested with rear hub motors. Those bikes averaged 26.9 and 46.9 miles, and I think there are a few factors that came into play that gave the Vika an advantage over many of those. First is battery capacity. The Vika X has a 614 watt-hour battery, which is a little larger than the current average of 535 watt-hours. Speed was also a factor, especially in the turbo mode test. As we saw in the speed test section earlier, this bike required a bit of legwork to maintain a high speed, and we actually range tested it in Class 3 mode, but our average speed with a comfortable cadence was 15.9 miles per hour, which is definitely on the slower side, and that helped to extend the battery charge over a greater distance. Third is that where most folding e-bikes we've tested had cadence sensors, this one has a torque sensor, which allows its motor output to vary, and that also helps extend its range. Another thing to note here is that the bike's motor shut off when the battery reached 9%, which still allowed us to shift and read the display until the bike shut down completely at about 6 or 7%. We'd prefer if the battery read 0 when the motor stops, but for now it's something to keep in mind and plan for when you're out riding. I do want to point out that we ended up doing our turbo mode test twice, both before and after a firmware update, and the second test gave us an extra 7 miles or 23% more distance than the first one, and those are the results that we actually included and talked about earlier. We didn't redo the eco mode test, but we think it's likely that the bike will go up to, and maybe even beyond, the 70-mile distance that Blix advertises. Not only does this result give riders some great flexibility for a bike that can fold up and come along with you just about anywhere, but it's also enough to make this a practical daily commuter. Keep in mind that if you're putting in that extra effort to reach Class 3 speeds, that you will likely get fewer miles than we did, but realistically, we think the Vika X did a great job in this test. Our hill test measured the Vika X's climbing ability at a place called Hellhole Trail. Our tester for this one is Justin, and he tried out the bike's throttle and pedal assist system in turbo mode to see if the bike could make it up the hill. Hellhole is not easy. It's a paved path with a 12% average grade over 1/3 of a mile, but let's see how the Vika did, and we can hear some of Justin's thoughts as he pedals.
Okay, we're out on Hellhole on the newly updated Blix Vika, and I'm gonna be honest, do not have very high expectations for this. It's this super lightweight, kind of city urban folding bike. So far it feels peppy. Surprised. 11.6, 11.3, 11.1 miles per hour, kind of holding right there. Of course now it drops. 10.6. Looks like it's gonna bottom out on that first, punchy section right about 10.6. So probably 3 miles an hour faster than I thought it would be. Motor sounds quieter than average. I'll let you listen to it through this section here. See, I don't know how much you can hear. You hear a little more when you get going faster like normal, but it's a pretty quiet bike, pretty stealth. And like I said, I did not have super high expectations, and I don't think this is going to be like a top 5 bike by any means, but it is way peppier than I thought it would be. Kind of feels like a mini go-kart going up the hill. Super fun, super light, super peppy, and let's go check the results. Okay, we are back on the Vika with the pedal test. It did way better than I expected on the throttle test, so I kind of am coming in with this thinking that it's going to be better than I would have thought. So far, feeling pretty decent. We're at about 12, 11.7, 11.1, 11.2 through that steepest section there. As far as the pedaling goes, feels pretty natural. Again, this bike's a lightweight bike, and a lot of times with those, I feel like you do need to pedal a little more to get up hills, because it's not just a 750 watt monster rear hub motor. And I think that's what this is. Like it is lighter weight. It's kind of in between some of those other lightweight bikes that I just feel I struggle with pedaling up the hill. I'm not struggling, but I do have to put a little more effort into it. So it feels, as far as like climbing hills goes, it's on your left. Thanks. As far as climbing hills goes, a little bit on the natural side, but you can definitely climb up. You don't have to push that much into the pedals. This isn't going to be a barn busting time. We'll see what it is when we check the tape, but it'll definitely get you up Hellhole in a more natural feeling, and overall it just feels pretty good. So yeah, with that, let's actually go check the results.
All right, so the Vika did a really solid job there. Justin finished the throttle test in 1 minute and 21 seconds at 13.4 miles per hour on average, and the pedal test took a little bit longer at 1 minute and 37 seconds with an average speed of 11.2 miles per hour. For comparison, I narrowed our data down to folding e-bikes with 500-watt rear hub motors, and the Vika X was about 8 seconds faster than average on throttle, and then about 18 seconds slower than average when pedaling. Our data suggests that the motor's peak wattage is a factor when looking at throttle times, but we don't have that specific piece of data for the Vika. Weight is also likely a factor since this bike is lighter than average, but I'd still bet the peak wattage is at or a little above average considering how peppy it felt, and of course that's something Justin commented on as well. In the pedal test, torque seems to be a factor, and the Vika X puts out 55 Newton meters, which is a little below average. And if you remember in the range test, the bike's torque sensor was an advantage there, but that also likely slowed it down a little in this test since the motor output wasn't always constant when Justin was pedaling. In the big picture, our test showed that this bike is plenty capable of handling some tough hills, and it's powerful enough to give riders 2 options of how to approach them. You can use the throttle if you don't want to put in any effort, or pedal if you want a more active experience. One of the last things we have to talk about is ride quality, which is sort of an umbrella term for everything that contributes to how the Vika X feels to ride and operate. That includes things like the fit and riding position, the tires, the motor and the torque sensor, and in this case, all of this bike's cool tech and that Blix Connect app that I mentioned. Let's go back out on the bike and talk about some of the basics, but then I'll go over a few more things once we get back here. All right, so let's talk about ride quality here on the Vika X. So, of course, this is a folding e-bike that, offers a little bit more than most, I'd say. As far as the riding position goes, it's pretty upright, maybe a little bit of a forward lean, but that also ties into the adjustability. So there is a single frame size for riders from 4'10" up to 6'2". And I'm 5'11", so kind of near the top end of that, but there's 6 inches of adjustment in handlebar height with the telescoping stem, and then about 12 inches of saddle height adjustment with a long seat post. So with that, I am, experiencing really good leg extension, and I've got my arms kind of down and out in front of me, but it's a little bend in the elbow, feels very comfortable, not too stretched out, and I'm not too cramped. Really, honestly, it feels very good. Very comfortable, like these grips a lot. But moving on, so as far as the ride itself goes, we do not have a suspension, so you will feel those bumps a little bit, but you do get some cushion from the tires. These are 20-inch by 2.4-inch street tires from Innova, and wide enough to be nice and stable, kind of what we like to see on a commuter style bike. Enough to add some cushion again, and then also just with that wheel size and the sort of lighter weight of this bike, just feels really maneuverable, very nimble, and pretty quick. And then we have a 500-watt hub motor with a torque sensor, so that feels really natural and smooth. I mean, we talked about that in the speed test section a bit, but again, just a really nice component of the ride. And then kind of to build on that, one thing we haven't talked about yet is this auto pedal assist setting, which is kind of the first one that you come to whenever you turn the bike on and activate the pedal assist system. So basically what this does is delivers power automatically based on your pedaling and the environment, and then also shifts based on your desired level of effort and your cadence. And we'll talk about those things a little bit more in the app a little bit later on, but it's still in development, so it's not perfect, not 100%, but it doesn't seem to downshift. I don't know if that's intentional or not, so I'm automatically downshifting, but then there you go, and maybe again. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so you can see that shifted up automatically, very cool. And our contact at Blix said that basically they're planning to do updates on that every 6 months to improve it, just based on rider data and how the system is used. So, you know, it's pretty interesting to start. It works pretty well, and I think that'll only get better. Again, just one very cool thing on this bike that you don't find in many other places. So I think that wraps it up here for now. Let's go ahead and head back to the studio, and then I'll see you back here to talk about the app later on. Overall, I thought the Vika's ride quality was excellent. I mentioned the comfort factor, but I think handling was another huge component as well. Folding bikes are usually pretty nimble, but with this one being a little lighter than average, the difference in weight was noticeable, and it gave this bike an airy and energetic feel. Not really a negative, but just something to keep in mind. This bike's total payload capacity of 312 pounds should definitely work for most riders, but it is fairly modest in comparison to some other folding e-bikes we've tested just because of this one's lighter frame. But anyway, let's go back out one last time so I can walk you through the Blix Connect app, and then we'll wrap up the review. All right, so the last thing that I really wanted to do here is kind of walk you guys through the Blix Connect app. So we'll just go ahead and run through that quickly. You can see this is sort of the main landing page for the app. It has the current bike name, which you can change that if you want. It has an image of the bike, and then the current charge level, as well as an estimated range based on that. And then also you have the current pedal assist setting, which you can choose from and change right in here if you want, if you don't want to hit the buttons on the shift levers over there. But sort of at the bottom of the screen is where the interesting stuff is. E-bike info is really not anything to worry about. That's kind of all the firmware stuff. But assist setting, that's kind of where you're going to want to go to change your class and your speed settings. So where the app is right now, which is sort of a testing development phase, I can set kind of the specific speed, but when it gets to the consumer side, you should be looking at the option to basically switch between class 2 and class 3 mode. So right now I have it set to 28 miles per hour, which would be the class 3 setting. And then you can change the speed of the walk mode. And then you can change basically whether the bike prioritizes distance or power once you hit kind of a low battery setting. But switching over to the E-Shift panel, we have, this is basically related to the auto pedal assist setting here, which delivers power automatically, but also shifts automatically. So you can change whether you want to do that or not in this setting. So right now I have that selected, and then I can set the desired level of power, my power, that I want it to shift at, and then my desired cadence. And then there is a table that will kind of give you some recommendations on that. So, you know, as we've talked about, it's not perfect, at least at this point in time, but it will be updated over time, and I expect it to be pretty cool. Again, not something you see very often, this kind of technology. But let's go ahead and keep moving. We have an accessibility section, which is where you can switch your units and turn the auto power on and off. You can also change whether or not the bike makes sounds when you hit the buttons. And then if you hit support, at least right now, that will allow you to email the company directly. But at least for us, you know, we have our own contact. So I'm not going to show you that. But under the settings panel, that's really just info about the app. That's not really important. But if you hit this middle button, it says ride. You can't really see that very well. But that shows you just a ton of info about the bike and your current, you know, cadence, your power level, how far you've gone, what your average speed is, just tons of stuff here. And then you can, of course, change your pedal assist setting from there if you want to do that as well. But very cool. Good start to the app here, and let's head back to the studio. So all of the tech stuff was super cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of it on future Blix bikes. I'll say that it took a little time to get used to the shift levers being on the left side, but I really do love this cockpit layout. The right side with the twist throttle and the module with controls for the lights, turn signals, and horn worked really well. And of course, I've got to give Blix some kudos for the turn signals in general. I'm personally always a really big fan of extra safety features. We've tested every one of Blix's previous bikes, with more on the way, and there's been a consistent theme that was also present here on the Vika X. As far as price goes, this bike exists in sort of a middle tier when looking at the folding category of e-bikes, but in true Blix fashion, it backs up that price with excellent quality and an unusually robust package of features. The Vika X performed well across the board in our testing, it was comfortable and fun to ride, and its design makes it really practical both when it's on the move and when it's folded down for storage. Basically, we think the Vika X is a great folding e-bike that really kicks things up with a natural pedal experience and a peppy ride, as well as a bunch of really cool high-tech features. We look forward to seeing the bike's automatic mode get even more functional over time, and we do recommend some changes to the gearing to make riding in Class 3 mode a little easier, but otherwise our whole team was really stoked about this bike, and we think Blix did a great job. If you're looking for a daily ride that has the flexibility of folding down to take up less space, we encourage you to take a closer look at the Vika X using one of two links down in the video description. One of those links goes to electricbikereport.com, where you can check out our written review, and the other goes to the Blix website, where you can purchase the bike if you're ready. And again, please use that link to help support us if you found value in this review. Please also consider giving this video a like to help out the YouTube algorithm, and let us know what questions or thoughts you have down in the comments section. But thanks for taking a ride with me today. Again, I'm John with Electric Bike Report, and this was the Blix Vika X.